We do have an office, a center at NIH called the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. Dr. Steve Groft, who heads the Office of Rare Diseases, which used to be in the Office of the Director at NIH, in the reorganization that gave us NCATS, was moved from the Office of the Director to NCATS. And he is going to actually talk to us about two programs, I think both of which are of real interest to the people who are here, and particularly to rare diseases. One is the drug rescue program, and the second is the Rare Disease Consortia. So, Steve, thank you very much. The reason he was a little late wasn't because he forgot about us. He just didn't notice that this meeting wasn't where it was last year. So he went out to the Neuroscience Center and discovered that it actually was at Natcher. So thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate your effort.
Thank you, Story. Yeah, one of the problems of old age, you don't read all the emails all the time. You just look at it and say, oh yeah, the meeting was there last year. And when I got the invitation, I put it on my calendar for the neuroscience building, and unfortunately, that overrode any other later decisions about what goes on the Outlook schedule. So I was out there and said, boy, it's really cool out here. It's not too busy, and nobody else is here either. So that wasn't too good. So we're here. First, it is so impressive what the Neurology Institute is doing for so many of the rare disorders within their entire portfolio. And just as many of you in the nonprofit area are advocates for your disease to the community, the Institute and especially the program staff are your advocates into the scientific community and into the NIH structure. And I think you can never minimize that importance. We always really suggest that the patient advocacy groups get to know who their program officers are, the program directors, and to keep in communication with them as they move forward, because they're the ones that will help you get your programs moving. And the example of this meeting is so tremendous. I hope everybody has a good feeling of how to get things to work now in neurology, how to get things to work for your disease, to gain a greater research emphasis and direction for your own particular disorder. I have a whole bunch of slides which I'll breeze through, but then I want to focus on the two issues that Dr. Landis mentioned. And so we'll go through those, and unfortunately I didn't finish these till yesterday, so if the Institute will send them out to you, that's okay too. It's good for me, good for you. So, and if you have any questions later on, please give us a call. So we're on a short time frame here, so I'll just briefly go through some of these things. There is the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences that Dr. Landis mentioned. And really, the mission is to catalyze a generation of innovative methods and technologies that will enhance the development, testing, and implementation of diagnostics and therapeutics across a wide range of human diseases and conditions, both rare, neglected, and common diseases. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. And if you look at some of the programs that we'll discuss, there's a great deal of flexibility in the approach that you want to offer. So I've used this slide considerably, and fortunately or unfortunately, it hasn't changed that much. We still are looking at about 6 to 8% of the population with the rare disease here in the United States, and that's about 18 or 25 million people. For most of these disorders, we don't know how many patients have the disease. We don't know many of the patients where they're actually located, and we don't know how to gain access to them. I think that's where your role as the leaders in the nonprofit area, organizations really are stepping up and helping us understand where the patients are and how do we gain access to them. I think, as Pat mentioned in her presentation, whatever you do, it's going to require collaborative efforts. You need the partners. You have to work with the partners. And I think as you become involved, I think you realize the value and the desire to work as partners. Many years ago, when I came to NIH, there were several researchers who said they didn't want to work with the patient advocacy groups because they felt there was a great deal of pressure to move research into treatments, and that wasn't what they were really destined to do. That has changed over the years dramatically, and I think people realize the value of working with the patient advocacy groups. Certainly the Orphan Drug Act, now that we're about 30 years after the Orphan Drug Act, you can see many of the incentives. And the first one has turned out to be probably the most important, the 7 years of marketing exclusivity. However, back in the early days of the Orphan Drug Act, one of the most important incentive that people thought was the assistance in drug development process, developing the study protocol. And ironically, we've come now 30 years and we're back almost to where we were. We need a good assistance and direction in developing study protocols and how to move forward with small patient populations. You can see the number of orphan product designations that have been made and the approvals. And that provides products for about 250 rare diseases out of the 6,000, 6,500, 7,000 different disorders. So you can see there's a tremendous gap of where we are now and where we would like to be. So some of our activities, and I'll go through these very quickly. We're working on this web-based global rare disease patient registry. I have one or two slides on this later on to sort of give you an idea of what we're attempting to do and why we're attempting to do this. There is available, if you have a biospecimen repository, we do have a rare disease hub, human biospecimen repository, that you can provide that information, then it's searchable. Yafa Rubenstein is in charge of these two initiatives, and please, if you have these, contact her and we'll make arrangements for you to provide that information into the database and make it available a little bit more widely than what it is currently available. You can see the extent of what NIH funds in research in rare diseases, about $3.6 billion for about 9,400 research projects. Quite a bit of research, and included in that is about $809 million for orphan product research. So quite an extensive collection. And we'll talk a little bit about the Rare Disease Clinical Research Network, something we designed about 10 years ago when we were given the mandate by Congress to develop centers of excellence for rare diseases. And so now we currently have 17 consortia at about 225 institutions worldwide looking at over 200 diseases, and there are approximately 83 active protocols. And we do have active patient advocacy groups participating, and we have them participating as a coalition of patient advocacy groups trying to support the activities of the individual consortia. And as was mentioned previously about the 20 groups or so that FDA is looking at, we feel sometimes, that even though we only have 17 consortia for about 200 diseases and these 95 patient advocacy groups, the lessons we're learning from that can be translated into other patient advocacy groups. And what we've noticed are several of the groups who, the first group were those who were not successful in the recompetition last time. Only 5 of 9 were successful. They have maintained their collaborations and extended them. There have been new groups that have been formed to take a position and roles similar to what our RDCRN does, and modeling themselves as they get prepared to respond to the RFA that's been recently published for the RDCRN. There's an active bedside to bench research program at the clinical center. If you're not aware of this, please look at that. It's been expanded to include intramural, extramural components and greater sums of money that are now available through the grant process and where we're available internally. They actually have 2 different programs, and you want to become familiar with those. There's a strong scientific conferences program that we still participate in and co-sponsor with the institutes. We've done over 1,200 conferences in the last 18 years or so. So we have the opportunities to help you identify your research, your research agendas, identify research opportunities, and really to get things moving forward. If you have not had a conference and you really want to become focused on your disease and the scientific research, you should be talking with the program officers and with our office as you move forward. We had the opportunity to initiate the Undiagnosed Diseases program at the clinical center about 5 years ago. That has now moved into a common fund project, and there will be a network that will be developed very shortly of about 6 or so, 7 maybe, different centers throughout the United States that will facilitate trying to get the diagnosis for many of the undiagnosed diseases, which is not an easy task. So many things going on there. And again, I just encourage you to look at the website from the Clinical Center of the Human Genome Research Institute about the Undiagnosed Diseases Network. Some interesting processes that really are going to pay off for speeding up the diagnosis of the rare diseases. And another activity here that I want to mention is what we've been doing with the World Health Organization, and OrphaNet has the lead on this, looking at the classification of diseases, and particularly rare diseases. In the United States, we're still using ICD-9, and if you look at that, you'll find not many rare disorders included. You look at ICD-10, a few more. Certainly the ICD-11, what we're proposing is much greater number of individual diseases with respect. This is terrible, I'm sorry. That's a great circle. It doesn't really, if you can imagine, I'm sorry, it wasn't like this. However, these things do happen. It's maybe exemplifies what we're doing as we go around in circles. But if you can, with apologies, looking up at the top right-hand side, the patient registries, the biospecimen repositories, and natural history studies, if you can cut out that piece of the pie, we really feel that developing pathways to interventions and meeting the needs of the regulatory agencies, that we have to develop information from patient registries, contact registries, and natural history studies. Now, we know the natural history studies can be very expensive, and so we are encouraging patient groups to think about developing individual patient registries to begin to gather that information that can be useful as they develop the research hypothesis, both basic and clinical research hypothesis, that will then lead into clinical trials. And as we know, one of the most important parts of a clinical trial is identifying the appropriate clinical endpoints. And only by gathering that basic information are we able to develop that information that will identify what endpoints should we be measuring, what endpoints really change over the life of a patient. And so that's why we are encouraging this to happen. And so as we move around the circle, as you can see, the interventions are evaluated, and the post-approval studies that are being required by FDA, the phase 4 studies, really take us full circle again back to patient registries, keeping an account of what patients are receiving the products and how does this all work. And so in essence, what you're doing, you are developing your patients who will participate in the various studies to move forward. And that's why I think the importance of individual registries becomes so significant for research purposes, not only to generate information, but they become your patients for the future. And here are some of the values and significant activities and need and opportunities that come about as a result of having a patient registry. And part of what we're doing is not only generating individual patient registries, but we're also trying to add in information from existing registries and from electronic health records. I wish I could say we are on time. We're not. We're probably about 6 months behind. We have about 12 organizations with new patient registries that we're ready to, that we are working continuously to get their registry up and running. I think we have 6 that are ready to go, and they will be opening up hopefully by the 18th of this month, which is next week. And so it's been a tremendous process. We also are in the process of developing a template with open source software, and to see if this can actually work. And we've run into some bugs. We've done some beta testing and some things we like, some things we don't like. And so we're still tweaking that to see if we can actually expand this and make it more accessible and actually work properly. And so whatever we do here, our plan is to move into a GRDR2, or Global Rare Disease Data, Patient Registry Data Repository 2, taking the experience that we've gained here in GRDR1. So that will be coming hopefully in the next 18 months or so. And so we are trying to have better data mining from more patients across more registries. We find for many of the individual registries that and organizations, they want to create their own registry, they want to own the data. And we are asking the registries to consider utilizing common data elements and provide de-identified data to one repository that we can really mine that data. And so it will require the use of common data elements, as we mentioned, as well as unique data elements for the individual disease-specific questions that perhaps can be reviewed. I think if you haven't looked at some of the activities going on with the Common Data Elements Working Group, and again, I really would like to commend NINDS for their leadership in doing this. For so many of the neurologic disorders, they have developed common data elements. So as you go about and you think about what questions should you ask, what information should you collect, look at the common data elements. So the idea is that you will have access to this information and take it, adapt it for your own use, and make it really, really useful. And those data elements and others not only will become the basis of your registries, but it will also become the basis of your thinking about your disease and what questions you should be asking, what information should you consider developing with the patient advocacy group that you're working with the patients, the families, and the research community. Here are some of the patient registries, the existing programs, and you can see different organizations: Patient Crossroads, Genetic Alliance, Remedy Informatics, the Sanford Healthcare System in Sioux Falls. NORD is developing an initiative on the patient registry and natural history studies. And certainly, if you do have a patient registry, we encourage everyone to include this in the registry of patient registries at the AHRQ. And the numerous activities that the PCORI Institute is involved with patient-centered outcomes. And I think just to be familiar with all of this is really, really important for you to understand what is going on. So I'm going to shift into the Rare Disease Clinical Research Network, something that, again, as I mentioned, we developed about 10 years ago. And you can see the extent of what we are working with. We have about 8 institutes. And NINDS, I will say, is the leader in providing us support, and the number of diseases within the consortia are related to the neurologic disorders. And so as part of this, we require the longitudinal studies, sort of natural history studies based with a hypothesis-driven research natural history study. We have a requirement that there be pilot studies, whether they're phase 1, phase 2 studies or demonstration projects, that the investigators can come up with. And each of the individual consortia that you see here scattered throughout, they have their procedures themselves for identifying potential studies that they would like to support from the grant funds that are provided to them. The money is not great. It's about $1.25 million per year total cost. Total funds, and that's not a lot of money in the world of the research grants, but we feel it's a little bit of seed money. And I think if you look at some of the successes of the organizations in generating funds from other sources, including going to working with the patient advocacy groups, working with the pharmaceutical industry, gaining grants from the FDA, the Orphan Products Program, other foundations, it really does exemplify what needs to be done for the rare diseases to get things moving and to bring an emphasis to those diseases within their individual consortia. As I mentioned, we will be, this announcement has gone out, and so the applications are due in November 7th. We have about 10 institutes right now who've agreed to join in the RFA that was published, the FOA, the Funding Opportunity Announcement for the consortia. And we ask you to take a look at this and see if you've got a group of investigators who have an interest. And we do ask also that if you do have interest in developing a consortium, coming in with an application, that you contact the institutes to find out what the level of interest might be, and really to avoid some duplication, because what we found several years ago, and we often find this, that several investigators who with the same group of diseases go about it on their own, and sometimes they just don't really get that collaboration that is necessary, and they were not very successful. And so we ask the teams that are being put together to talk with each other to find out what else might be going on. And I think then at that point, the people who know pretty much what is going on with individual diseases are the program officers at the various institutes. So we ask you to go ahead and contact them and to look at the FOA. If you have any questions, contact Rashmi in our office. She's pretty busy most days with phone calls from various investigators to explain what the purpose and goals. And we will have a pre-application meeting on September 25th. That will be webcast, a video cast that is open to everyone. We are also planning a separate video cast for the patient advocacy community that will follow hopefully within a week after that. So we haven't announced that yet, but we wanted to get this one going so we could answer questions for the research community. But everyone is welcome to join in viewing this this video cast to get an idea of what is happening here. So we talked about this a little bit earlier on with the number of consortia with the 18 is really with the Data Monitoring Coordinating Center, Jeff Krischer at University of South Florida. So the number of patients that we've enrolled, again, the numbers have been increasing each year, and we enrolled 3,000 just last year into the studies. And there is the website that will provide you more information about the RDCRN. And just to complete the discussion with the Clinical and Translational Science Awards program, there was an IOM report, and I just encourage you to look at that. You can see the direction and the suggestions, recommendations that were provided by the IOM committee. And it really did talk about strengthening and taking advantage of the individual CTSA strengths and programs and extending them out and making them more useful to more. I think one of the things we have to do within the RDCRN, within our office, is really to look at the CTSA programs, what services, what resources are available, and sort of determine how are we going to utilize those more effectively than what they've been utilized in the past. We did a little bit of a survey of the individual investigators who are involved with our research network to determine the extent of utilization of the CTSA resources and services. There are about 61 different CTSA programs throughout the United States. And we found that all of our research networks are located at sites that have the CTSA program funds. But I guess what we just found this tremendous variability in the utilization of the services of the individual CTSAs. And I think that's something that we really have to do. We have to sort of look at this and see how we're going to get this to work out a little bit better. And I'll try to get through these very quickly. Some of our activities, as I mentioned, working with utilization of the CTSA resources and combining those with the RDCRN, we have to look at this a lot more closely and sort of figure out how we can work better and to really utilize the services. We're working with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to try to come up with better ways to develop the prevalence of rare diseases. There's been a great deal of interest recently in pediatric and adult medical devices, doing a needs assessment with the Orphan Products Office at FDA. And there now is an active research medical devices research interest group here at NIH that was just established. We also have been having conversations with the NIEHS, National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, about gene-environment interactions. And again, looking with other groups at the animal models for rare diseases, including the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges. So we'll be talking with the institutes to see who else might like to join us. We've had some early conversations. We will be announcing very shortly the recompetition of the Data Management Coordinating Center for the RDCRN, and this will be an open competition. So moving forward real quickly, we have a program for existing molecules, trying to repurpose them. Christine Culvis is the director of the program, trying to identify new therapeutic uses for these compounds. And as you know, from those of you who are familiar with product development with the industry will pursue usually one indication for that one product, and that's the direction. They often try to find the one disease that really will be responsive to that treatment, that intervention. And so as we know, over a course of years, we have many, many compounds that are available that could be used for others, that are used for other diseases and conditions. And so here are the eight companies that we've worked with, and they made about 58 different compounds available to be discussed. And you can see some large companies are participating, and I think they feel that this has been a worthwhile effort. The awards that were issued in June of this year relate to the various diseases: Alzheimer's, alcoholism, smoking cessation, schizophrenia, peripheral artery disease, LAM, Duchenne, calcific aortic valve stenosis. So you can see the number of different diseases, rare and common alike, that are available and that have been selected for further study with these repurposing of the compounds. And again, if you have any questions, please check the website, but do contact Christine Colvis as well, and Bonnie Dunn also in the office if Christine is not available. So the TREND program, another program, and I won't talk about that. John McHugh is leading this initiative. Again, it's bridging the gaps that exist at various stages of development for the individual products. And so a novel program that's been around for a few years now and bridges a program. It used to be the RAID program, and trying to provide in-kind services, contract services, to really bridge those obstacles, the gaps that exist, to permit the development of products and not get bogged down because we're missing data or have data that is not acceptable by the FDA. A major, major big issue. So there are the program leads for the various programs within NCATS. And again, hopefully we can send the slides out to you and you can have these for your own use and later on. So that is the information. I'll end it with that because we're getting close to the break time.
Okay. So I'm sure there are questions for Steve. So I would tell you that NCATS is great programs. There are lots of opportunities for our disease groups to interact with NCATS. In many cases, the NINDS program directors know what are the best or easiest ways to get access, have connections in NCATS. So you can start with us, and if we can't answer your question, then someone from NCATS can. Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you. It's Rebecca Oberman from the ML4 Foundation. We're particularly excited, since we don't have a registry, about the new web-based registry template, particularly because it allows for the customization for each disease of the common data elements. It is, however, constructed so that the editing for that is done in Joomla, which is not hugely user-friendly, particularly for many patient advocate organizations.
Right.
We're fortunate, for instance, since I'm based in Atlanta, to have someone who does back-end IT work for Home Depot, pretty sophisticated folks. They don't even want to touch Joomla.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if there might be, I realize that's still in development. And again, we're really grateful because I think it's an awesome opportunity for your office to be assisting us with. I'm just wondering if there might be another editor that we might find people who could help us actually with, that might be forthcoming.
I think that's going to be part of the extension as we move into the second phase after September 30th. The contract expires September 29th. So on September 30th, or shortly thereafter, we hope to effect a new contract that we then can assist the organizations doing what we said we want them to do and what we hope we'll be able to do. So it's, you learn a lot. Some good, some bad, as you go through. Not everything works out quite the way you want it to, and in the time frame that you want it to. So we're trying to make it work a little bit better. So thank you.
Okay, so I just had a question about the Rare Disease Clinical Research Network. So it's a great initiative, and I just had a question about if a consortium does not get renewed. What can you just speak to a little bit about data storage and then access following?
Yeah, that information remains with the investigators. We do deposit the data from the individual studies into DB Gap here at the Library of Medicine, so that the information is stored there when the studies have reached a certain point, like 5 years after the data has been collected. So we have those requirements. Otherwise, we go through a process with the individual investigators to really have a status report of where are the studies, which ones are they going to be able to complete, and we've already done this. And then we don't enable new studies to be initiated. We ask them to develop a timeline to complete the studies or to gain resources to complete the studies, so that all the studies will move to completion, either with the grant or with other funds that will become available. So we go through this analysis with each of the individual investigators and their co-investigators throughout the consortia. So we've done this, and everyone's aware, and it worked very well last time, and we hope it works well this time.
I had the privilege of working with Ramona Hicks on common data elements, and the flip side of the common data element is the globally unique identifier as exists for ENDAR
Yes.
and now FITBR. Is there a rare GUID program in development?
Yes, we'll be using the same GUID system that is available through ENDAR, and they actually are making some modifications to that are becoming available, and we'll utilize that system in our system as well. And actually, the European Union folks are working this. They are suggesting others use the same GUID system from the ENDAR. So we have that collaboration, and we hope it continues to grow.
I noticed in one of your slides, you mentioned the positive effect that the 7 years of market exclusivity has had on the development of drugs for orphan diseases, and that's great. But as a disease advocacy organization, and we look at other incentives that might be put in place for the development of therapies, particularly in neurology, we at least tend to shy away from the concept of market exclusivity as the incentive, both because it's a disincentive for the second drug to be developed, and because, as we all know, therapies don't always work for everyone, and we're learning more and more about subtypes. So I was wondering if you could speak to your view of the different incentives between the data exclusivity incentive as opposed to market exclusivity, and why for orphan market has been more successful than data exclusivity might be.
Well, with marketing exclusivity, I think it's pretty simple. It's economic that with marketing exclusivity, you have the sales for that product and you get first on the market for that condition, regardless of what else comes along. And I agree. And many times what is first on the market may not take care of all the symptoms of the disease. It does not cure the disease, it alleviates some of the symptoms. And I think that's why you see many of the disorders now, you'll have 3 or 4 different compounds, if you're fortunate, that will look at different aspects of the disease. So it's unfortunately the nature of drug development, the way things are moving. Pardon? Bribery. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The hearing goes too with age. Yeah. I think that it's the 7 years go quickly. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's been a powerful incentive for the industry to remain present. And we actually knew, and we talked about this back in 1982, before the legislation really came into place, that we realized some companies would make huge profits off of some of the products, and we hope what it would stimulate that company then to reinvest those profits back into new products. And I think that has happened to a great extent. You look at the growth of several of the biotech firms that started out with one orphan product and how they have grown. The Genentech, Genzyme, Celgene, Shire, and all the groups, they're necessary partners. And at some point, I think very soon, people will be starting to talk about the cost of the products. And that's going to be that's becoming a major issue. We've been able to stay away from that because there are so few products that are available. As the number of products continue to improve, the cost on the healthcare system will increase. I think people are going to say then, how can we afford these? And so where do we draw that line and start reducing those costs? But again, if you have a disorder and you've got a treatment that stabilizes or brings you back, it's pretty strong. It's hard to get rid of those emotions that go with that, and the need to keep that product available. Paul, sorry.
So this might be a question for both of you, but you're standing there, Story. So when I look at the description of what's necessary to do CDEs for my disease space, it's fairly intimidating. And is there support there's support to bring people together for that? Because it seems like it's a pretty big time commitment. And are CDEs coordinated with the FDA data requirements? So just something I've heard that there's a disconnect.
So if you could hand the microphone to Petra, since she's in charge of common data elements, you'll get actually a complete and correct answer rather than my trying to bumble through it.
So I'm overseeing the CDEs for the NINDS only, but as Steve showed you, there is now an NIH website because, of course, they not only needed in neurology, and we had the privilege of working with the Office of Rare Diseases to make sure that our data elements are harmonized with the common data elements in these registries. We do provide support. We have staff members as well as a contractor to work with us. We have to be, however, conscious of budgets, and Story has been very generous when I asked her about developing CDEs for new diseases, but there are, of course, constraints. We wish we could develop them for all 700 diseases in the very near future, and we wish we could provide everybody with actual sort of compensation. So we have been very fortunate. We had very generous researchers, patient representatives, industry representatives, and also data experts to almost volunteer their time. But what we try to do is we try to make it very easy for them. So we do all the background work. We collect all the case report forms. We then, do all the comparing, contrasting, and identify really where the issues are that need to be discussed. And then we have the subject matter experts in a limited number of phone calls give us their input. We don't pay them for this, but it has not been a problem. And people have, in fact, told me that they feel the value for their research community makes it worthwhile their volunteering a limited amount of their time to this effort. We've also been very fortunate of being able to work with patient organizations. So we don't have necessarily funding, and it's very difficult for us with all the new rules that we have to get people together and organize meetings and provide them anything beyond water. So we have oftentimes, been able to have a patient organization that is organizing a meeting anyway, give us sort of a half day of a sort of a satellite meeting space so that we didn't have to pay for travel. So we try to do the best we can within sort of limited budgets, but unfortunately it is to some degree relying on people volunteering their time. Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So we try to work on that as well. We have interacted with the FDA, and it seems that one of the standards that is emerging is potentially CDISC. So we have done a pilot where for Parkinson's disease as the initial indication, we have actually sort of translated our standards into CDISC, and we had a meeting with at the NINDS recently with representatives from CDISC, the FDA, and other NIH and similar entities to discuss lessons learned and if this is something that we want to pursue for other diseases. And the answer is yes. My understanding is that now some MS organizations are also looking into that, and we are willing to help in any way we can with that. So yes, we try, but as you know, that's also an evolving field. There's now Transcelerate, and I don't think they have quite determined exactly which standards they will be using.
So if I could just say, we often get asked, okay, what has happened as a consequence of the sequester? And I would tell you that we have a waiting list of at least 20 different diseases that would love to work with us to create common data elements. And we would love to be able to take every one of the sets that we have and turn them into FDA appropriate CDISC, whatever. And we are in the very difficult position of saying, okay, do we fund a small project in NeuroNext phase 2 trial, or do we do this other thing? And we have, enough opportunity to do those 20 diseases and to translate all the ones, but we just are stuck every day. Do we do this or do we do that? And how do we balance the needs? And don't mean to whine, but looking forward to the additional 2% that we almost certainly will lose unless there's a miracle before October 1st makes that task even more difficult. And you are our consumers, you are our constituents, and we just feel incredibly badly that we can't do more, better, faster now for every one of the disease groups that we have. So are there any other questions for Steve? I just want to tell you, NCATS is an extraordinary opportunity. They are going to be looking at the Clinical and Translational Science Awards. There are 60 of them across the country, and NCATS will be looking at how they can do an even better job of serving the patient and disease communities, and hopefully we'll end up with a set of programs that do a wonderful job of serving all of you rare disease people and common diseases. It's not all rare diseases sitting in this room. There at epilepsy, Parkinson's, and others here. So thank you very much, Steve.
I just have one quick question. Dr. Groff, can you say what, when you say we would like for you to participate in a registry, what registry you're talking about for those of us who are new to this?
Yeah. The Global Rare Disease
Okay, thank
Patient
you.
Registry Data Repository to contribute information. And we will we'll be providing some guidances on how to gain access to that information, how to provide the information to that. So just contact the office and we'll be working with you. And that will come out during the next year too. So I'll jump out. Please write. Let's Dr. Landis take over. Thank you.
Thanks. So I really apologize that we lost the break, but I did not want to cut the 3 presentations in this last session short because I think they were really important for everybody here to be able to hear and to ask questions and make comments. So, so now we're going to come back for a plenary conclusion and evaluation, but we're already here, so we're not coming back. I should have read this before I said it. So I would like to ask you for some thoughts on this particular nonprofit forum. I think there were some very interesting things that I heard. I heard that for many of the nonprofits, it is a critical issue if you're funding research or providing patient support, that you have outstanding scientists and clinicians who are on your boards, that I know from experience with some nonprofit groups that occasionally the group can be captured by a particular scientist or clinician who then directs the whole enterprise in a way that in the long term may not be the best, that you need to have, as Susan said, turnover in your advisors. You don't want to be captured by a particular opinion or set of views. I realize it can be extraordinarily hard to take it upon yourselves to go to the right meetings, to kind of network to figure out who are the people that you want to be advising you. But that's a key issue. If you have the right people, doors open and extraordinary opportunities arise. If you don't have the right people, your reaching your goals can be really stalled. The other thing I heard was that partnerships can be critical for a small organization starting out. As Susan Dickinson said, identifying big organizations with lots of resources that share an interest in parts of your disease or all of your disease can actually transform your ability to make things happen. And as you are perceived as making things happen, then people support you and participate in what you're doing. So those were some of my takeaway messages, but there are lots more that I'm sure others of you have in your mind. And we'd also like to open up the microphone to those of you who have thoughts about what was most valuable and about this forum, what you would like to see repeated, expanded, replaced, whatever. So, Ron.
I think it's an appropriate first comment to remark to everyone here that the NIANDS management and program staff has just devoted 2 days of their precious time to all of us. And it's not just 2 arbitrary days. These are the 2 days before one of their 3 National Advisory Council meetings coming up tomorrow. So I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude for taking that time for us.
Thank you very much. There will be people who will be up late tonight and up really early tomorrow to get the things done that we haven't gotten done, including me. But I can't think of a more important meeting that I could attend than this one. So comments on the program, things that you'd like to hear about that you haven't heard about, things you'd like to hear more about. Okay, down in the front, there's a comment or a question. And fill out your evaluations or Marion will shoot me. Make my life miserable. Yeah.
Those of us organizations that support RFPs and grant funding are often privileged to have NINDS investigators acting as reviewers, and I wanted to know if they get credit for that in their professional assessment, because it's critical for us to have access to their expertise, and they can't accept honoraria or anything like that. And I just wondered.
You speaking of NINDS program staff?
No, of scientists who do. Who
So
do grant reviews
they
and
can accept honoraria. There's nothing, NIH staff could not accept honoraria, but people who work in medical schools and research institutes can accept honoraria. They may not want to take that money, which otherwise would go into the research. So whenever, every year at most institutions, scientists have to fill out an activity sheet for what they did. And I am sure that this kind of grant review or participation on medical advisory boards or research advisory boards gets written down as public service. When people get promoted, the things that get looked at are teaching, and that could be interns or residents on a clinical service, or it could be medical students, or it could be undergraduate students. They also get graded on their research accomplishments. Those are papers that they've written, grants that they've gotten, but then there's this whole other piece, which is public service. And I know of cases when I used to be at a university where if someone didn't contribute to the greater public good, they might not get promoted. So that's something that they get rewards for that. You just need to make sure that they acknowledge that on their CVs. And also you can write a letter to their department chair thanking them for their participation. And if you have a really good reviewer, that's a useful thing to do. You might not want to do it for someone who's not a really great reviewer. But no, we recognize, Susan, a number of people have spoken here to the importance of investigators, clinical and bench investigators participating in the kinds of things that you do. And I found it very interesting to hear about how scientists who were not necessarily working on a disease problem, having been introduced to a disease problem, may become quite interested in pursuing that relationship to their basic disease question. It doesn't have to be that you have a family member who has the disease, but hearing about the diseases can be quite compelling. I would say my first year as NINDS director, I actually sent out a blanket invitation to all of our voluntary groups to come and meet with me, and I met with 65 over the course of the year. And it was probably the most important and enlightening thing I did in my first year. I found the stories and the strategies to be extremely moving and have informed many of the things that the Institute has done.
Story, before I ask my question, I'll just say as a council member, I've actually heard it referenced that as one of the attributes, I think for a Javits Award, that this person's been very active in the not-for-profit. So it does definitely get rewarded in numerous ways. So
It won't get you a Javits if the science isn't spectacular.
correct. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was part of,
Right.
included
It's something
in
that we
justification.
certainly take into consideration.
But so as someone who participated in the shape of it, I didn't know necessarily how the content would come out, but I would say that I don't remember what we called the section where we had the sort of stories of
Right.
various not-for-profits to be super useful and interesting. And so it's just one piece of feedback that we've done that in other years, we've not done it in other. I think if we focus on getting just different stories like that mix of quality, I think that's great.
And I think having Pat also, who wasn't part of that panel, but certainly,
Bonus points, but I suggested it.
anyway, I thought that you provided some extraordinarily nice examples of how voluntary groups can make a difference. Other questions, comments? Okay. So I think this has been an extraordinarily successful nonprofit forum. Every year we make a few experiments. We try to make it better. We've split this between 2 days, which we don't usually do. And we'll be interested to hear if you think that worked out. We hope that you got as much out of it as we did. I certainly learned a lot. So the federal staff is now out of the picture. And those of you who are choosing to stay for the afternoon will work with the planning committee, the nonprofit members of the planning committee for the afternoon. So the thought is that you all will have lunch, a delicious lunch, at your own expense in the Natcher Conference Center cafeteria, and then come back to this room at 1 p.m. And Paul Gross has a full agenda to prepare you for this afternoon's closed session. For those of you who are staying over for the live council meeting, to see the council meeting tomorrow, I hope to see you. Those stairs, Marion almost did the same thing. And there's nobody here who knows anything about orthopedics, so we'd have been in trouble. Thank you all very much.